You were live.
All right. Senate Education Committee, March 28th, 2:10 in the afternoon. We're spending some time this afternoon meeting for a second time with some directors of the CTEs in Vermont. And as we are thinking about how to fit CTEs into a governance model that might, as we're thinking about this whole education reform package together, I think we wanted to spend a little time with the directors, really getting clear about kind of what you think and what you see as being the most helpful. Another way to put it is, what are the ingredients for you in order to run successful CTE centers? And so we're starting with Patrick, who can be cut if for no other reason than you have to be back for parent teacher conferences. So, and so I think you know us all.
I do. Thank you.
Assuming you have a good memory. Assuming you have a good memory. So why don't you just introduce yourself for the record and where you're from. And so, by the way, I think we end up with representative of all three models here today as well. And it's worth noting that Mr. Wilkin represents one of the, I guess, the only technically comprehensive CTE. I'm not sure. We had enough discussion. That confused us enough about that yesterday, but I shouldn't say that. You represent a comprehensive CTE at St. Johnsbury. So you also have your own thoughts to bring to this as a CTE director about what are the ingredients for success, but you also represent one of the comprehensive CTE. So
Yes.
The floor is yours. Introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Pat Gukin, and I'm the Career and Tech Ed Director at St. Johnsbury Academy. And that is from the St. Johnsbury service region here in Vermont. We actually share that region with Lennon Institute, and they're 7 miles to the north of St. Johnsbury. And they are considered the same model, where they're a comprehensive high school, where we are a tech center that provides education for the whole student. We're going to have all our campus is big. We don't have a CTE wing or a building. It's our section of CTE is interwoven with the science department. So if I gave an example, we have chemistry lab, electrical class, robotics, astronomy, actually biology, and then human services. So we're mixed into the same building. So what ingredients work for that is that all students are treated the same, in the sense that they're all just St. Johnsbury Academy students. They don't get a label of maybe being the CTE students or the tech students. They don't have to go off campus to a satellite site, or they don't go into a different section on campus. A lot of my classes are spread out amongst other buildings too. We had 3 kitchens, so they're in like 3 different buildings. We actually have a restaurant that's on Main Street that is not too far away. But the big part about it is being comprehensive, in the sense that students can come right from English class to business class, or woodworking, or automotive. So that works for us because the students feel like everyone else, that they're welcome, that they're not sort of different in our culture. So there's a culture piece that is developed with that. At our school, we have a morning assembly every morning, and all the students are mixed in based on their grade levels. And we have a forum every morning that sort of goes through daily announcements and highlights of the school and the message to the school. It's not separate from the population or anything that has a model like that. This model works for us in our region because Linden Institute is the same school. So students either decide to enroll in one or the other, and students can also enroll in our region into Danville High School as well. So we have like sort of Danville, that's a smaller school. We have Linden Institute, that's a medium-sized school, and then St. Johnsbury Academy is a large school with population around 950 in our area, St. Johnsbury. So we offer all the programming that other tech centers. We really focus on 6 programs, and most of them around the trades, with electrical, plumbing, automotive, culinary, human services. So those are the programs we focus on. We don't have like 10 programs, where some centers are bigger that way with diversity in programming. So we have a lot of pre-foundational courses. So all those programs have like introductory level courses to get students either interested in them or to build basic skills for those programs. So those pre-foundational courses are 1-hour courses, and we offer a lot of them. And I don't really have the statistics of other tech centers, but I scheduled teaching assignments 2 days ago, and I had to schedule 13 sections for intro to culinary, which is, I'll go out on a limb, but I think I'm in first place with the number of classes for intro to culinary in the state. And that's a direct result of our comprehensive high school sort of model, because I have accessibility to 950 students that get scheduled the same way. Their tuition is paid the same way. By statute, there's one pay for tuition to St. Johnsbury Academy, and that covers everything. It's inclusive. And if you're a share time person, we share students with Linden Institute. I send welding students up there. They'll send me electrical students or culinary students. And then we just, we both have set tuition rates. And it's, I don't know if it's simple, but it is simple, where, students come for the program, which is 2 hours long. And we have 5 sections. So it's like 40% of the tuition. So it's really basic with that. We have Danville High School that sends us 1 student this year. They're sending us 4 next year. Danville's probably a high school around 100 total. Quite sure on those.
So when you say send you 4, does that mean that they come for the day?
They're share time students, and they would come just for our CTE program. They would receive their academics, their English, math, science at their host school or home school. We call them share time students because we're sharing them throughout the day.
How do they have time, whether it's with LI or with Danville, how do they have time to get there? How does that work? Because I know that's an issue with it's kind of always an issue.
Yeah. So we kind of have an agreement where we transport our own. So if there's an issue, we'll go pick them up. If there's a student that can't get there. But we will provide transportation no matter what. I have a bus that goes to LI, Linden Institute, every day. They have a bus that comes to St. Johnsbury Academy every day. Danville, we only have 1 student this year, so he drives himself. And sometimes students get permission to drive themselves, and we go through all the procedures based because they got maybe the job after school. So we do it by case basis with transportation. But what's wonderful is that we're only like 7 miles. We don't have some of the maybe transportation issues that maybe some other centers have, where it's 40 miles or 30 or 20 of that nature. So
Questions? Yes.
So I know when I was in school quite a few years ago, we had Bradford Tech at the time. A lot of the students that went there afternoon, they couldn't participate in sports because the distance to get back. With your situation, a lot of your CTE students can participate in your sports programs too, right?
yes.
I don't know, Melissa may straighten me out, maybe that's not the case anymore, but.
Unique to our center, being 7 miles one another. We have a student in construction class right now, And we celebrated his Danville State Championship basketball
Yep.
in class the Monday after they won it. So it was as if we won it too with him.
Right.
You know, if he has to travel or with spring sports coming up, we just communicate with the school and they've got to leave early to get back to catch a bus. It's sort, a lot of our own students at St. Johnsbury Academy have to leave early because we play majority of our athletic events in Burlington because of our Division I status, and they got to leave early. It's kind of just, make up your work. We got stuff for online and credentialing that can be done for students to participate in both. So that hasn't been a major barrier with athletics.
Yes.
So building trades is it structural as well, or you just said electrical?
So we have construction technology and electrical and plumbing.
I missed the construction.
Yeah, I may have missed it myself. I teach it.
Do we,
Class I teach.
Do they-
Or get
do they-
involved in the most.
do they build a house? Trying to get, I know.
So right now, we are in a little transition period with construction, but we're building some bridges for the Fairbanks Museum to put out on their nature trail because they had some land donated. So we try to create as many partnerships with our community as possible because it's part of our school mission, which is character inquiry and community. So we kind of built that into our programs, and we're working right now with a vacant commercial space in our downtown area to have our plumbers and electrical go there next year because they're going to build a food co-op in town. So we're working through the CTE loan that was created a couple of years ago. I think Representative Marcotte had something to do with that. But anyways, we're helping do some commercial work. I got so many things going on. But so we partner with our community a lot so our students will get experience in the class out on the job site. And then once those students become proficient enough, mainly seniors, they'll go out on work-based learning and work under local electricians and get paid. So we'll have we have 3 students out in automotive now that are working at the dealerships. They're getting paid. Instead of going to class, they go to work-based learning. We have 3 electrical students that are doing that too. And construction, we have 8. Because there's plenty of need for that. So it's just there's a lot of opportunities. Right? Sometimes St. Johnsbury is only so big, so the opportunities are sometimes limited. Yeah, we get all kinds of plumbers, but plumbers move around. How do we get a kid to partner with that local institution or business? But we're working on it. But so our plumbing teacher, he was at a camp on Joe's Pond this morning, turning on water, telling kids how to do that, make sure there's no leaks and things like that. So they get on the job training at St. Johnsbury Academy. And transportation's a little easier for us with our independent status. We own our own buses. We have little buses, mini buses, we have big buses, we have vans, which bases on our model because we have, a boarding program that we have to provide transportation. We have full-time drivers that are employed by our school. And of course, our independent status, we own all our facilities and so forth.
Talk to us a little bit about your curriculum and where it comes from. Do you develop your own curriculum or do you rely on curriculum from the state, or how does that work?
Okay, so at St. Johnsbury Academy, we have all our programs have proficiencies to meet that were established by the AOE, and the AOE actually established most of them working instructors in the programs. So our teachers at St. Johnsbury Academy will use them as a guide to make sure that we're teaching students certain skills and proficiencies, but we of our independence nature, we do our own curriculum in the sense that it's up to our teachers. Master plumber, he should know how to be taught in the right way, master electrician, and so forth, right? We have ASE certified automotive teacher who's certified in everything, right? So
you have goals or proficiencies to meet, and then you let them do it in their own figure out their own way to get there.
Yeah, like in plumbing class, we will, we use a textbook that is approved by NCCER, which is, they build curriculum. And our teacher will use that as a teaching tool, but he's not gonna go page by page, chapter 1, chapter 2. If he thinks in his mind that he should do chapter 3 and then chapter 6, because he knows the concepts in the systems connected with that proficiency, then we have the flexibility to do that. With the AOE, we try to have there's recommended like industry recognized credentials, right? So some of our programs are students like in human services, they're going to earn 6 credits of dual enrollment credits, or have the opportunity with CCB. Okay, and then our electrical kids are in the apprenticeship program. So that we want them to at least have first year done by the time they leave school. At our school, we're trying to get 12 kids through year 2 of the apprenticeship for electrical. So and that just saves money for kids. It moves them along, and the earning potential increases as they move forward. So, but like plumbing, maybe we just started 2 years ago. We're hoping to get some more kids through after at the end of 2 years. So, and all the students took their midterms a couple weeks ago, so they're on track. All the electrical kids passed. So, the curriculum that my teacher is established in his environment is working, right? We want them to pass either the apprenticeship exams, or we want them to earn credentials, or we want them to earn college credit. In culinary arts, kids have the potential to earn 8 credits through White Mountains Community College. That's sort of the closest culinary school to our location, our tech center.
When do they start? Is it normally,
No,
junior, senior, or can they start all the way down at freshman for the CTE?
So majority of students are going to start their junior year, and it just especially if you're sharing students with other high schools, because they want to get maybe some of their graduation requirements fulfilled. We have sophomores can start. It just doesn't fit very well. I've had 2 sophomores, one's a senior this year. So because he started as a sophomore in electrical, he has spent the whole year out on work-based learning. We're earning money all year, senior year, half his day is spent work-based learning as a senior in high school. It's got pluses and minuses. He doesn't feel so much a part of the school. It's kind of weirdly grown up, but I'm going to try another sophomore this year and see how that works out. So.
But I think Senator Weiss, did you have that with all?
Always, but yeah.
Let me just tag on to what Senator Heffernan was, and then.
Yeah.
Do you offer like CTE intro programs where a freshman, sophomore would at least be aware of what?
Yeah, 9th graders will take career exploration.
Okay.
And they'll do inventories and so forth and learn about themselves and maybe find a career pathway to explore during their 9th grade year. And then we will actually say, okay, then they'll go and do shadows in our programs for 6 weeks. So they do like 2 weeks in welding and 2 weeks in auto, and now we've even expanded it to the art building that we have, and say, oh, you're interested in art? Well, okay, let's do a shadow there, because it's career exploration. It is a CTE exploration. So students will do 2-week shadows in business, and it's their choice based on sort of the data they collected, learning about themselves and exploring different careers. And then really during their sophomore year, that's where we see all the sophomores. And we have a lot of students that take all of them and take all the intros by the time they leave. If they've shadowed and they like auto, they're going to take intro to auto as sophomores, and then as juniors move into the automotive program. It's pretty typical pathway for students in CTE at St. John's Very Academy. You know, we encourage the auto kids to take intro to welding because that goes along with automotive. We teach kids that there's actually programs that sort of, run parallel to each other. So they'll have opportunities and options when they're done.
So by the way, just in terms of people thinking about questions, we have 3 other people. So if you, depending on what your question is, how it relates specifically or not, but I'd say that for any reason other than that, so
Yeah.
yes.
Well, that, I was thinking about that because I feel like I have a handful of questions that it would be great if everyone could answer because I think it would help with the painting of the picture. My specific question for you, you started to touch on New Hampshire, but would anything that's currently being discussed in the education reform proposal harm your relationship, the cooperative relationship on the New Hampshire side?
That St. Johnsbury Academy, it wouldn't.
Okay.
The majority of students that we have from New Hampshire are choice towns that don't have a high school that are on the border.
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming to St. Johnsbury Academy, Monroe, Lyme, New Hampshire are the 2 big ones that we get students from.
And do you send students to New Hampshire?
We do not.
Okay, so
We do not.
really, it doesn't.
You can ask me that one later.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, great. Yeah, maybe that's an everyone question.
I'd like that.
I think it's helpful. I mean, there has been a proposal to use the CTE map to look at district boundaries. Do you have specific concerns or thoughts about that? I see your region has Linden Institute as well. Do you all have some kind of cooperative agreement?
So we don't have, we have duplicate programs.
Okay.
The only one is automotive. And I was speaking with someone earlier today and they're like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I think it happened in 1971 and everybody was working on cars and they said we could have duplicate programs. And it was the most popular program, but we don't have, like where I have intro to welding.
Yeah.
Foundational course, and Linden Institute has the welding program. So
Oh, okay.
I'm sending 4 female students there next year for welding.
Cool. Just
and
women is what you're saying.
Yeah, we just send women up there. No. I have it. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. So
That's not
are you
what
sending
I'm-
just for
no,
women or like
no.
plus guys?
I'm sending 2 boys up there that
Okay.
that are there this year. That
Yeah.
are gonna go up there for the 2nd year. of
Oh,
welding.
okay, but for women.
Yeah,
That's cool.
so
That's great.
we took them up for a shadow, or meet the teachers and so forth. So and Linden Institute would do the same thing. They'll send students down in maybe groups of 4 or 5 to shadow electrical and kind of meet the teachers and so forth. Because, we have a rivalry with our 2 schools, like a real rivalry.
Okay.
That is like 100 years of football against each other. So that's pretty big.
Okay,
You know,
yeah.
it's so we try to break the ice by doing visits and pre-training opportunities with kids, and it's worked really well. We're gonna have over like 22 kids that are share time next year, and the majority of them are from Linden Institute. So,
Okay. I'll just say these broadly, and if maybe someone else is the right person to answer them. Economic development has long had a concern about driver's ed programs, that a lot of students aren't career ready or ready, to move on because we don't have enough driver's education. Have the CTE centers specifically looked at that as maybe becoming their responsibility?
It is our responsibility.
Driver's ed is your responsibility.
Well, it is at my school.
Oh, good.
So driver's education is under CTE at St. Johnsbury Academy in 2 different ways. It's a day program
Mhm.
that the students that sort of get their entitlements for free. And we, students will take a driver's ed in the morning and get their driving hours in through during the school day based on their free blocks or study halls.
And you're not having a problem finding teachers? For
No.
that visit?
No, I hired that teacher 3 years ago. And then I have another teacher that teaches to our adult ed that we have through CTE. And he teaches by quarters kind of in the school year at night. So and so there's 4 sections of those.
Great.
And then we have 2 sessions in the summer where those teachers will pick up those sessions too.
That's wonderful. What is your banner metric for career readiness or attainment? Like what makes you feel like you're successful that you could use to measure?
Well, I think it's really differentiated, to tell you the truth, because for one student, it may be that you want that student to be employable.
Mm-hmm,
And then another student, I may want them to be career ready.
mm-hmm,
And then another student, I may want them to be ready for post-secondary education.
mm-hmm,
And I really feel our programs do that really well,
mm-hmm,
because some programs all have a student that's taken AP US history and they're in our electrical program,
mm-hmm.
right? So you have all these different opportunities to explore and be prepared for whatever meets your personal learning plan.
Right.
So,
So you want them to feel ready.
yeah,
Here, that's
it's like some students are, may not get all their credentials in culinary,
mm-hmm,
but they're going to be employable.
So, just make sure we have,
yeah,
so we have a question or two, and then
Yeah, again,
so
so
back, I want to make sure that we
yeah.
have
some
some,
of John's very specific questions,
because
just for clarity. Um, did you say that, your academic classes for CTE students are the same academic classes as the college prep?
Mhm.
The same teachers, same classrooms, they just
Yeah,
blend?
we have different levels and, algebra 1, algebra 2 and so forth, like
Okay.
that with scope and sequence.
And then I think you said that you charge the same tuition for a student who's in CTE as one who might be in college prep.
Yeah, you were enrolled in St. John.
Because some of our conversations are financially related. I have heard, okay, thank you. That's good. That's all good.
back to,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
so what time do you have to leave?
I'm here until you.
It means you can always say these are questions that are answered by
I will
others.
talk forever about this.
Do you have any unmet facilities needs, or do you feel like that's a benefit of being independent?
Okay, so we are just like all the other tech centers, will not, like we're busting at the seams,
Okay.
right? And the difference with us is like we have to pay for it with our own funds, right?
Mhm.
But then again, we're a part of everyone else as a CTE center for the state of Vermont.
Okay.
So if there was some sort of fund that helped with some facilities, I have plumbing and construction sharing the same space.
Mm.
It looks like a really interesting work site and it works, and they have to learn to work together and not get in each other's space, but we need more space.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's going to get to the point now, we're growing every year and we're going to run out of space. Everyone has wait lists.
Mhm.
If we had more facilities, we would not have a wait list. I think there is some difficulty hiring teachers, but most of it's because of space and safety regulations and a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
Okay. My last observation or question that anyone can answer is, I was very impressed visiting a med school in Providence, Rhode Island. I went with I was a chaperone for Burlington-Winooski High School when we were doing the Nellie Mae reimagining of school. And a med school, they stay really connected to their campus through a small advisory, but they're gone 3 days a week working in the field.
Mhm.
And it's still essentially a functioning high school. So I just didn't know if you all have tried to take some best practices around like having a campus community while having students out in the field. Just like the best practice, if you all talk about that.
so at St. Johnsbury Academy, we have advisories. So I have 7 advisees
Okay.
and they're seniors, and I've been their advisor for 4 years.
Yes, that's great.
And we meet every morning in our assembly
Mhm.
for 20 minutes. So I'd always tell parents, like, I'm going to tell them this afternoon when I meet with the parents, say, I actually see them more than their parents do. Because I see them every day for at least 20 minutes. I don't know if you remember having teenagers, but they're gone, right? And then we have scheduled in times in our schedule where they meet in my classroom, like our classroom space, on Wednesdays for 15 minutes personal. And then we have an advisory period on a Friday that is a half hour long. And we'll do activities with them, and we do activities through class functions and so forth over 4 years. So at St. Johnsbury Academy, because of us, being around for over 175 years, we got all these traditions. And there's certain traditions where, the sophomores sell wreaths. And then the juniors sell something else, and it bonds us together as a group, but it also bonds us as a community that, it's our year to do it or whatever it is. And so there's a lot of culture building at St. Johnsbury Academy based on our mission and which is character inquiry in community.
Great.
Thank you. And thanks for coming on.
Oh,
I know you have to slip out in a couple of
I can slip out now, or
It's up to you. If you're gonna get
yeah, that'd be great.
awesome.
Melissa's next.
Yeah.
There, how are you?
Good afternoon. You are, Melissa, you are on, so introduce yourself for the record, and you kind of heard that discussion.
Absolutely.
Alice, talk to us about your model and some of the things that you do, and this whole notion we're trying to get our arms around, I think, of what do you need to be, what are the ingredients for a successful CTE?
Absolutely. So my name is Melissa Connor. I am the director at Stafford Technical Center in Rutland. This is year 30 for me in career and tech ed here in Vermont. So I've been doing this for a long time. I started my career as a business education teacher in the career and tech ed world down at the Technical Center at Springfield, which is now River Valley Tech Center. So I taught there for many years. I did 1 year of as an assistant director in an interim capacity. And then for the last 10 years, I have been here in Rutland at Stafford, 4 years as the assistant director and 6 years as the director. So I appreciate the shift in focus where we're focusing on the positives and the things that we want to see in a new system versus kind of picking apart all of the legislation. So this is exciting to me to be able to talk about this. So I sent you my testimony and I'll kind of highlight it and try to capture some of the questions that I heard as along the way. I'll start with sports. Our students, Senator Williams, are able to participate in sports. Many of the sports buses will pick students up here at Stafford or we'll have early dismissals. So they do fully participate in sports, theater, any of the arts programs that they want to participate in at their partner high school. So curriculum is a big love of mine. Anyone that knows me in the CTE world knows this is kind of my wheelhouse. Some of the things that I think that would make for an ideal CTE system is that if high school graduation requirements are the same across the state. I serve up to 11 high schools here at Stafford, in addition to homeschool students. And it is really challenging to give every student the same opportunities here at Stafford when we have up to 8 different sets of high school graduation requirements. It requires us to pull them from their CTE time to either take an elective class over at Rutland High School because it's one of the things that they need that we don't offer here at Stafford, or we're having them do independent studies, which are not always the best learning modality for a lot of students. So that is one thing. I think it creates an unnecessary barrier for a lot of our students. I think also, we have state approved programs by the Agency of Education. Our teachers have worked really hard with the Agency of Education to document the embedded academic credits. We have many high schools. Well, the way the statute is written is that we simply recommend academic credit to our partner high schools, and they are the final decision maker as to whether they're going to award that credit. So for instance, English, math, science, social studies, and whatnot. It creates challenges because we have, and I'll speak just for myself, we have some high schools that really want to dissect our curriculum that has already been approved by the Agency of Education. We aren't dissecting the curriculum of our partner high schools when they send students to us and saying that they're on track for graduation. So again, it's another unnecessary barrier. We may have students from 6 different high schools in one program, Some of those students are going to earn a math credit. Some of them are not going to earn a math credit. Even though we recommend those credits, it is up to that individual high school counselor and principal to decide whether they want to award that credit. So it would be nice if in the change that if we have recommended credits that are coming from the Agency of Education, that those are recognized and it's not an optional thing. So that would really help our students as well. I mentioned the state approved standards, and Pat alluded to those as well. Our teachers all participated in a process over a couple of years where they really tried to make it so that although our programs have regional differences, the core curriculum is the same. My opinion, and I may be alone in this, is that we now need to work towards how we are assessing the students. So that we are, a calibration process. So a student that I'm deeming proficient or a teacher is deeming proficient here at Stafford is being assessed in the same way in the Northeast Kingdom. We have a lot of students that will move throughout the year and they may bounce from one tech center to another. And it is really challenging sometimes to take a student from another tech center, let alone, a half day versus a full day program. But when we're looking at some of what, when we get some students, what we would consider proficient is not always the same. So I think the next step that we need to take to have a dynamic system is to statewide kind of be aligned on how we are assessing students. When we talk about funding, there's so many different thoughts on this. But the modeling that's been proposed with the $25,000, it's out like for my tech center, my proposed tuition next year is $22,600. So $25,000 sounds great. But when you start crunching the numbers, and we've kind of like preliminarily done that, losing some of the state assistance that we will lose under the current proposal, looking at, there's still unknowns as far as how his overhead assistance will be calculated in terms of, am I going to, what will I be paying for rent for the space that I currently occupy now? What will I be paying for services to the superintendent's office, the business office, regardless of whether it's a BOCES or whether it's a single district? Those are some big unknowns, and it would be very helpful to us to actually be able to have some answers to these questions so that we can sit there and take our FY26 budget that we already have done and be able to kind of run the numbers the way the new system and see how we, end up. That would be very helpful too, in my opinion. Staffing, you've heard this over and over, and I've testified to it previously. We need a salary schedule that pays our instructors an industry wage. We are losing. I have been trying to hire a health careers instructor, a second one for 2 years. And I've been unable to because I cannot afford them. Our salary schedule does not allow us to pay them what they're used to making in industry. And I think most people who have a love for teaching and education are willing to take a small pay cut to come to education. But when we're talking $30,000 to $40,000 of a pay cut, that's a lot, especially for somebody with a family. So that is something that I think we definitely need to work on. When we are talking about middle school career exploration, I love the idea, and I think we need to do that in a planned and purposeful way. We have to have clear expectations and outcomes. What are we hoping to get out of that? And then thinking about the roles, being very clear as to who is responsible for that. Is it the middle school educators? Is it the CTE educators? Or is it a combination of the two? Because obviously, if we're going to have more staff involved in middle school on a much more structured, that's going to add to our staffing needs. So we have to be considering that. But middle school outreach and career exploration is definitely a positive thing, I think, in this plan. In looking at governance, I will say right from the get-go, I have no preference as to whether we are one district, whether we are 5, whether we are aligned by the regional things. I think the biggest things that we have to look at and the things that I think that would help us be successful is really having a CTE focused central office. There are so many, I just spent an hour and a half meeting with our business manager who has been on the job here in our district for 2 years. And he's still, after 2 years, trying to wrap his head around how CTE financing works, around the 6-semester average, allowable tuition rates, and all of that. Having a business office that truly understands how we are funded, understanding our regulations and how varied our needs are in a tech center versus a traditional high school or school would be very helpful, and I think create more efficiencies for us.
Can I-
We have a clarifying question.
I just want to make sure you understand, do you mean central to all CTE programs at AOE or central?
A central district, whether it's one district, 5 districts, however, there's so many proposals out there right now, not at AOE, separate from AOE. So,
Clarifying question.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. What was your last question?
Well, I was trying to understand, it sounds like, at first I thought, oh, that does sound helpful, but then I didn't understand what was. Like, I'm trying to understand what a central office in each district.
Okay, so hang on. So I'm going to lead you to a very, very specific question, see if we already have the answer in our hands. When AOE gave us some matrix about costs, it had a lot of embedded, it had all the manpower from essentially from the AOE down to essentially the principal. Was there in there, what was in that spreadsheet, was there a CTE specific, like, I don't know, division, or how did they address it if that detail was in there?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I've seen the spreadsheet that you're referring to. I've seen roles and at which levels, but I haven't seen anything around the funding of that. So there may be a document I have not seen.
No, but I think just to make sure that we're understand what you're saying, I think what I did, and you tell me if I have it right. What I think you're saying is that it would be helpful to have for all the CTEs one kind of central office that did back office work for you.
Correct. And what I'm trying to say is there's conversations about one single CTE district. There's conversations about having 5 CTE districts. There's conversations about having 17 districts, school districts around the 17 career and tech ed centers. Whichever model, whichever governance structure, we need to make sure that whomever is in the business office and whoever is the superintendent has a real solid understanding of CTE regulations, finance, because it is a very different animal than regular ed financing.
Okay, what I'm alluding to, Melissa, is that in the Secretary of Education's proposal, there may have been only a AOE specific CTE coordinator for the state, but there also may have been at a district level a CTE coordinator built into that whole hierarchy. I think we have the answer in our hands, but we're because spreadsheets aren't that
Right.
user friendly. We've asked for an org chart to show that very clearly so we can all move forward.
Yeah, and I think that would be very helpful. I think there's so many different variations of what it could look like. And, what I've been asking for, I served on the advising committee with APA for the 1.5 to 2 years. I served with Jody and Pat and Eric Remmers on the sprint teams. And one of the things that we keep asking for and we still have not received is, here are all the menu of options that are out there. Let's model them so that we can see the actual impact. Because, I think here at Stafford, I think we would make out okay, but I know that some of my colleagues around the state are very worried about a negative impact. And I think, before we make this huge decision, we really need to know the impact. And then we really need to have people that are, in our, whatever that central office is, whether it's a BOCES or whatever it might be. In my opinion, we need people that know CTE. So there's that. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the comprehensive local needs assessment, which is a huge amount of work. And I know it's the nemesis for many of my counterparts around the state. I've decided to embrace it and use it as a reflective process. We're required to do this every 2 years. I've structured it here at Stafford in a way that we do parts of it every year. So for instance, yesterday we had about 80 employers, business people that work with our programs on the program advisory committees here, and we were reviewing student performance data. It is something that, I feel and our staff feels that we need to be in a constant reflective state in order to constantly be improving and aligning it with not only our Perkins plan and the CLNA, but also our independent strategic plan that we have for our school. So that's something. I think moving to a regional model.
Clarifying again, are you talking about, so it sounds like some of that is what you are doing internal to your school and that isn't mandated. It's some of the things you want to do on your own. Is that correct?
So everything that we're doing is mandated as part of the CLNA process. We've just changed our approach to it here at Stafford. So it's not a 1-year overwhelming process. We spread it over a 2-year period.
Okay.
To
And
make
would you be doing that if that were not, are you at the point where if that were not mandated, would you be doing it anyway at this point?
We would be doing many parts of it, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
And did someone else have a question?
no, you're on.
Okay. And thinking about it, if we were to go to 5 districts, 1 district, whatever it might be, I think, I worked with Jody this year at our VACTED meetings, which are our director meetings, each month to have a different section of the CLNA. And in the afternoons, after our meetings are concluded, we have conversations about best practices around the CLNA. And there's many parts of the CLNA that do not have to be done independently at a tech center. So I think about labor market information. There's no reason that each center is reaching out to the Department of Labor to partner with Matt Barowitz or whoever it is to get information on labor market information. That's something that we could be doing as a state and doing it as a collective effort. And I think having a larger district of CTE centers would basically create an economy of scales in a sense and allow us to be more efficient in our work. And so that's something that I would look forward to as part of a larger district around CTE. There's been lots of conversation in the different proposals about eliminating regional advisory boards. I have a regional advisory board here because I'm part of a host district with Rutland City. I was listening to some of the testimony in House Commerce and Economics yesterday. RABs are very different in every tech center that has a RAB. My RAB here at Stafford, we have 24 members, which is a very large board. But we have 4 subcommittees, and that's where the real work happens. I think you can have an effective regional advisory board if you structure it correctly. And I can't take credit for it. This was the structure when I came here to Stafford, but we have a program committee that really is looking at all of the programming that we're offering, is looking at the labor market information. Every year we look at that information as a committee, and then we report it back to the full RAB. We have an adult ed committee. So adult ed is something that has been missing in a lot of the conversation. We have a committee that is looking at our programming and again, making sure A, are we running cost-effective programs, and B, are they meeting the needs of industry in our region? We have a finance committee that is made up of all the superintendents in our region or their designee that does everything for our budgeting. We meet about 4 times a year, and they are the ones that kind of set the stage. Like, this is the maximum % increase we can have in a budget. And they go through it with a fine-tooth comb along with the administration here to set our tuition rate. And then we bring that back to the full RAB. And then finally, we have an outreach committee that is about the recruiting and retention of students for here at Stafford. So, I think I've heard a lot about RABs, about how some feel that they're ineffective and it doesn't have to be a RAB, but I do believe that there has to be some board at the local level that has the regional representation because we are working for the regional employers. We are trying to produce the next generation of employees for them. So I do believe that there has to be that strong connection, but I also believe, and this is something that I say to our executive team of the RAB all the time, is I don't want to have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. We have to have purpose. They have to be goal-oriented. There has to be actionable items. And actionable items as far as recommendations that we make to our governing board, which is the Rutland City School Board. So that's something that I think having some sort of local oversight, I think is a good thing.
Hang on a second, got a question?
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand, ideally, it sounds like AOE being your umbrella agency isn't necessarily a good fit, and it should be like ACCD or, you know, the working with the Department of Labor. We just created like an Office of Workforce Management. I don't know, but I'm not hearing that you need AOE to be more to you, but you need to answer to somebody else.
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I believe, I am an educator through and through. I went to school to be an instructor, and I believe in the agency of education. I believe that especially when you have a workforce of instructors that have not gone to school to be an educator, we need that education accountability and the professional development that they provide. I do think we need to partner more and maybe more purposefully with the Department of Labor. My board chair is a regional manager for the Department of Labor. So I have very strong representation on my regional advisory board from the Department of Labor and the workforce lens. And she also serves on our program committee, which is all of our programming. She serves on our adult ed committee to make sure that there's a strong connection to our workforce. So I think it's really, picking and choosing the right people to be on your regional advisory board to make sure that you have those other connections outside of the agency of education so that you have that balance. I kind of look at it, our bylaws require that we have 51% industry representation on our regional advisory board. So we make sure that, we have GE Aerospace represented, we have OMIA represented. We really look at every one of our program areas and try to make sure that we have representation from each one of those cluster areas, as well as having post-secondary representation as well. So
do you want more from AOE?
I think that we need a lot of the work, and I say this all the time at VACTED meetings, a lot of the work that we're doing in the centers really should, if we want consistency around the state and we want commonalities around the state, that work should be led by the Agency of Education. So for instance, when we switched to proficiency-based graduation requirements in the state of Vermont, and we received these documents that said the standards for each program, to me, the next logical step would have been the Vermont Agency of Education leading the conversation about creating the proficiency scales for the standards that they set for each program, talking about the assessments of how we are assessing our students so that it's common around the state. That was left to each individual tech center to do that work. So now we have probably at 17 different tech centers, 17 different ways that we're assessing a lot of the student work. We do have some common curriculums, but as Pat alluded to, every tech center instructor uses that common curriculum in a different way. So again, consistencies across the state where we're trying to create common systems is not necessarily happening, but if we did have more support from the AOE around curriculum, I think that could happen. And it takes, I say all the time, it puts a lot on the plate of the administrative team at each tech center when we can't be out into the programs, seeing our teachers in action and working with students and really being an educational leader around teaching and learning, giving feedback to our instructors because we're kind of in the weeds trying to work on systems that the AOE, in my opinion, should be working on for us.
So I'm thinking back a couple of years ago, we first started hearing about CTE. AOE only had one representative, one person that worked for CTE. And there was a model for more.
Yes.
So did they ever get that additional?
So as long as I've been around, there's always been at least in the last 10 years, two. They have added a third person and they have a part-time data person that they share with other departments. But in terms of, is that enough? And remember, I've been doing this a long time. When I first started, there were content area specialists. So as a business teacher, all of the business teachers from across the state would get together a couple of times a year, and somebody who had an expertise, who was an industry expert in business, would be working with us on our curriculum development, the creation of assessments, common assessments across the field. Ruth Durkee, she's great at a lot of things. I would not want her advising as far as auto tech curriculum. That's not her wheelhouse. Doug Webster, the same thing, and Julia Schuster. They do a great job of bringing the right people in that they have to contract with from outside. But it really would be nice if we had some content experts to help our teachers, really bring the curriculum alive and kind of take it to the next level.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before I keep going?
You keep going.
Okay. You've heard this one many times, a common statewide calendar, particularly around that professional development. Right now, the way our professional development days are set up for career and tech ed teachers, we are taking away from student learning days because they are happening on student learning days. So we are having to get substitute teachers for our teachers, which is very hard to do these days. Typically, I will have 6 teachers needing to be out of the building on the same day just for professional development. Forget about anyone who might be ill. And typically, I'm lucky if I can get 4 substitute teachers to cover. So that is definitely a struggle. So we have teachers that are missing out on professional development because they are happening on student learning days. Big physical space, that is one that is the big question. And I think looking forward, we have to have some sort of a plan on how to expand high demand programs. I am busting at the seams. I am at capacity. I just looked at the number, so I'd give you the right number. We had 447 applications for next year. Our max capacity is 278. So that's 400 and, that's a lot of students that we're having to say no to. And that's hard. Right now, we're still going through applications, but we are at 97% capacity for next year. And all but 2 of our programs have wait lists, and they're lengthy wait lists. We expanded our electrical and plumbing program 2 years ago to have 32 students. I could fill 2 more sections of that program if I had the space and if I had the instructors. As it is, my electrical lab is in our old school store, which is very small. It is not the right space for it, but we're making the best use of it. We had started a feasibility study as far as looking to renovate our 1974 outbuilding that currently houses natural resources and construction to expand so that we could build modular housing in there to be able to provide affordable housing for our region. And then also to house natural resources and have a new space for our electrical program. We were in the midst of that feasibility study when this governance conversation started up, and Rutland City said, well, we're putting a pause on that because we don't know what's going to happen. And they didn't want to be financially on the hook for something if we're no longer going to be part of the district. So we're in this kind of tenuous spot right now. We have a willingness and want from our board to expand, but until kind of all this governance is figured out, we're on hold for that.
Okay. Senator Patton had a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Melissa. 2 questions now, actually. On a calendar,
Yes.
how long, if we came out with a calendar for all the school system, when do you think it should be implemented? First year, second year? 2026, 2027?
If we could get all of the bargaining agreements to align, which would be a big task, I would love to see it for the first year of the transition so that we can really, I think there's a lot of, once we start this transition, there's going to be a lot of things we didn't even think about that we're going to have to be able to bring our teachers together to figure out and administrators.
And the second question is on what you just spoke about. Has any of the CTEs, and this goes for all of you, or CTEs, have we started reaching out at all to the private sector to say, because like in electrical construction, there's big companies out there that you might be able to get endowments from in that we don't have to always go to our tax dollars to build a electrical wing, to build a construction, help do that. Do you know if any CTEs has created or reached out to our private sector to try to tap that resource?
We have not. We have a policy within Rutland City Public Schools around donations, so it's pretty hard to get things like that in ours because of local decisions. So,
thank you.
Yep.
So Senator Williams had a question, I think. No, okay.
Okay.
And Vanessa,
I'm not sure she's done.
I know, yeah, okay. Didn't want to leave people out. Okay, yeah, keep going.
So one of the things that we've talked about here is, do we need to look at our scheduling model? And if you look at states like Massachusetts and Connecticut, who have 4-year comprehensive models, the way they are able to kind of almost double capacity in the same building is around their career tech ed programs, is that they will have their level 1 students in, let's just say in the first week, they're in all of their academics while level 2 students are in their programs. And then the following week, they rotate. The students that were in academics are then in their career and tech ed programs. That's going to take some regulation change because of the way current things are and the number of minutes per average that they have to be in their technical program. But that is one, you can definitely, I think it's easier to find academic space than it is to find program space, because that is the most expensive part of building a career and tech ed center, is having that adequate program space. So I think that's something, I think with some of the models that we're talking about in terms of, I'm thinking of, Rutland region, if some of our smaller high schools were to, let's say, consolidate, could one of those, Stafford, the technical programs stay in our current facility, but maybe one of those smaller high schools becomes the academic school for Stafford. And so on the week that our level 1 students are in academics, they're at, one of our partner high schools that has merged with another high school. And that becomes ours. And then we flip flop. And so there's transportation things, but, thinking about the number of tech centers and schools in general that need to expand or have modifications, that could be a temporary solution to explore. And it is, something that we could look to Massachusetts and Connecticut for more information. And I first learned of that when we were having our NEASC accreditation visit, and the chair of that was from Connecticut. And he spent a lot of time, sharing how they do things. And we did kind of a quasi approach to that in our first year back from COVID when we were in hybrid, and we did a model like that. And, it was successful in a way that we had never done it before. We were in every other day, and teachers did enjoy having students for a full day just in program and not having to shift to academics. So that's a possibility of something to explore. The other question, it's just a question that I have, is in the proposal, there is conversation about having to have both pre-tech foundations and pre-tech exploratory. Pre-tech foundations being those intro courses to all of our programs, and then tech exploratory being an actual program where they explore, where you have 10th grade students exploring all the programs within your center. And again, it comes back to space and staffing to be able to do all of that. That would be a challenge for my center to be able to have the space and the staffing for all of that. And then the final thing, and I think there's been a little bit more conversation, but really having an adult education system, which has not been a part of a lot of the conversations, that allows flexibility for our adult learners to learn a new trade, update an existing skill set, and working collaboratively rather than competitively with Vermont Adult Learning, Vermont Department of Labor, CCV. We're all going after kind of that same area, and we all want to be the one that's, teaching the manufacturing or teaching this. And I think we have to kind of come up with a system, and I think we could do it where we're working collaboratively instead of trying to compete for the same students over and over in the adult world. So I will stop talking because I know you have 2 more people.
Well, thank you. That actually was very helpful, but there may be more questions around the table. Are there?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First, real simple. In relation to St. Johnsbury Academy's, how they approach CTE at Stafford, the academic classes, the regular academic classes, math, English, etc., for CTE students, are they held in your facility, in your wing, or are they held in the high school?
It depends on the high school. So if you are a Rutland High School student, some of the Rutland High School students take their academics with us here at Stafford. Some take them at Rutland High School. Some do a combination. If you are an Otter Valley student, you do all of your academics with us. If you are a Fairhaven student, you do all of your academics with us. West Rutland, Pulteney and Mill River, they do one academic class at their high school before they come to Stafford, and then they do the rest here. It gets kind of chaotic.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Different, different question, different topic. So the Regional Advisory Board, I was very excited to hear that GE and Stafford had a relationship.
Yes.
Having been a Navy chief engineer using GE engines at sea, that's very personal, very special to me. But my question is, for the Regional Advisory Board, I know you like to have kind of like, so Stafford specific at this point, Stafford region specific.
Correct.
If we were to go up to a larger district and we would potentially have both Rutland County and Bennington County in the same district, is that too large a geographic footprint for an RAB to really understand the potential business partners in the community?
I don't know Bennington as well. I do know that Wendy Morris, who is my RAB chair, she is the regional manager for the Department of Labor for both Bennington and Rutland counties. Her take, and this has just been casual conversation, is that it is a very different economic sector in those two counties. Our kind of in-house conversations with my superintendent and with other people within our district is that, and this is my opinion, I think each tech center needs some sort of a program advisory committee that is really core around their area. I think that helps the number of connections we're able to make around work-based learning, for instance, through the members that serve on our regional advisory board, I think are critical to getting students. We have about just under 70% of our students participate in work-based learning every year. And a lot of it's from those connections. They're here in our school. They're serving on our program advisory committees for each one of our programs. So they kind of are dual purpose in a lot of ways. So they're really connected. They're here for student interview days. We have students doing job shadows, projects. Hubbardton Forge is a great example. Our engineering students work to design a cart system for them to use in their warehouse. And so different people from Hubbardton Forge were able to interact with our students. I don't know how helpful that would be for them to be doing, partnering with somebody down in Bennington. But having that local person where Steve Weigers can, on a whim, like, hey, we have a question about this, and he can drive 30 minutes over here to meet with our students is very helpful. And I think great connections for our students. I think there could be, a smaller board at each of the tech centers and then one regional board that would cover both counties. I think that could work.
So,
How many schools does your CTE have coming to it?
So this year we have 11. We have 8 primary schools that we serve to. We also will accept students from Middlebury High School for programs that Hannaford Career Center does not have. So we typically take students for electrical and plumbing and cosmetology and also public safety. So those are the programs we typically serve from Middlebury High School. And then we also have Rutland Area Christian Academy, which we're seeing a larger number from. And then we have students typically for electrical and plumbing from Burton. And we also have a large homeschool population that seems to grow each year.
so touching on that again, I think you've already answered this, but I want to make sure I understand it. Do some of those students from some of those schools come to you for the day
Yes.
all the time?
Yes.
You are effectively, at least for the year or whatever, you are effectively their high school.
Correct. We just don't award the credit or give them their diploma. Our students arrive here at 9:15 and they're with us until 2:20.
Okay, got it.
They're in the same building.
Yeah. So, okay, good.
Yeah, one quick question. So this may be a bit of a nuance, but the homeschool students that come to Stafford, how's tuition paid for them?
It's based on the town that they're enrolled in.
So the town potentially paid. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really informative, very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks. By the way, you're very welcome to stay on and listen to the next people who will come right up to the table.
We have a further drive, so I'll
Okay.
let you go.
You can sit together if you want to. It doesn't matter however you want to do it.
It's all good.
Okay. She's the president, I had what she said.
Okay.
So I'm Scott Farr, I'm the superintendent director at the River Valley Technical Center School District in Springfield, Vermont. This is my 21st year in administration, the last 11 as the superintendent director. And 10 before that as the assistant director. Prior to coming to River Valley, I spent 16 years in the Job Corps program, mostly in Virginia, with stops in Baltimore and near Buffalo, New York. We have about a dozen programs at the Tech Center in Springfield. Culinary, advanced manufacturing, engineering, industrial trades, which is a mix of plumbing, electrical, welding, carpentry, business, information technology, human services, law enforcement, human services, audio video production, horticulture, natural resources. Did I say health sciences?
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
It's okay.
And then we have intro classes, two different varieties of the previous, we have what's called pre-tech exploratory. Those are kids that come for a 2-hour session and try out all the different programs. Those are primarily for our two high schools that aren't co-located with us. So that's Green Mountain kids in Chester, and that's kids from Bellows Falls Union. And we get some Springfield kids for that, but then also we have pre-tech foundations, which is our shorter experiences in multiple trades. And those are an hour long, and Springfield kids come primarily for that. And it really depends on their interest. So we get about 150 different enrollments for our pre-tech foundations, and the pre-tech exploratory, we've been full every year with 32 kids in that. And I think that shows a lot of 9th and 10th graders want to try stuff out, and their schools want them to come to us because they can't wait to come to the Tech Center program. I'm happy to report that enrollments are up this year. About a third to a half of our programs are full. My carpentry program is full. Industrial trades is full. Health sciences is full. Business and criminal justice are very, very close. And again, I said pre-tech is very close to full. Things I would want to add, we are a different version of governance, but of a very similar to franchise. So when Pat's talking, Melissa's talking, we're all nodding over there because we do a lot of the very similar things. I get worried about certain things that we talk about changes in the future. Like Melissa, I want barrier-free access to us, and it all comes down to multiple schools with different graduation requirements. And what we do, is it good enough to meet your requirement? When it's probably good enough to meet the kids' goals, and we're supposed to be in a student-centered kind of universe here. I think I'm pleased that the secretary is looking to go down the road of some sort of statewide uniformity there. It would be great that some sort of language that would say local graduation requirements can't be a barrier to access to career and technical education. That may be a quick way to get there till we get to what the secretary is talking about. Other things I think we could do in the short term, and the 3% base rate cut, I'm optimistic about what I see as far as maybe some more funding coming to education. I'm not sure how that all filters out to career and technical education. If we're trying to grow career and technical education, it makes no sense to cut 3% right off the top. I think we're looking just to be even with where we were last year. If we can gain on that, that's great, because costs are going up. Like Melissa, I remember sitting in committee with Dave Sharp, guy from Bristol. You've been.
I was just
He
talking.
was really, really adamant about doing something as far as middle school. And like Melissa, we should all be doing something with middle school. We have a robust program, but I know that we're not getting to every kid. We do all kinds of different things. I highlighted them last time: after school programs, fun kind of visits, We have a robotics program that has revived our engineering and advanced manufacturing program. That program is pretty close to full, and a lot of it is because kids have learned the stigma that comes with advanced manufacturing in particular. It's gone away because they're realizing there's a lot more to it, and I can do it, and the coding is cool, and I can create things, and engineering isn't that as hard. And so we have about 40 kids in the aerial and on the ground robots. They're qualifying to go every tournament everywhere. I'm doing that all on grant funds.
Those are middle schoolers?
Those are middle schools and some high school kids, high school kids. That we started with 4 kids about 3 years ago. We're up to close to 40 in the program. A couple different coaches. It would be great that if, and I'm doing it all with grant money and donations from industry. Advanced manufacturing companies are donating to us for us to make this happen. It would be nice to have consistent middle school programming as part of what we provide. And like Melissa said, I don't know what form it takes, but it's important enough to dedicate resources to it. Right now, I'm using the Perkins grant for that. Access for students that are in early college. I lost a handful of kids to go to early college. I am not against early college, but I'm against early college when the kid also wants to take advantage of the college credits that are in the programs that we have, and as part of their career goals. We should be able to find a way to have the flexibility to do both. And as Melissa said, it makes no sense that if a kid has decided that they want to get their high school diploma through adult basic education, that they also can't access career and technical education. And we're on the cusp of having our local adult ed office be co-located with us. And now I think that would be great. Come work on your diploma stuff and then get your CTE and career headed in the right direction. But I think that's a federal thing. It's what we're being told. Governance, I'm kind of like Melissa. I don't care at this point. As long as we're able to have an identity within the system. I get worried that we would lose our identity. And I think our identity is important. First of all, to the public, where budgets are voted on by the public, career and technical education passes with more than a 70% rate. Addison County, I know that's true. I know it's true. And Barry, and for us, folks want career and technical education. We need to have an identity. The second part is, as part of that CLNA that Melissa talks about, our students report to us, they really like us. They like what they're getting. So let's not water down what we're doing by smushing us with the rest of the system. Let us have a unique role within the system because kids like it. And when they like something about their public education, they're engaged. And we can't lose that in looking for cost savings and geographics and all of that. We should be smart about that. I am not up to speed with all the testimony. So I may be a day or two behind. I know that the agency gave a overview of career and technical education. They talk about 3 different governance models. And maybe that's too many governance models. That's what I'm hearing. We should take the opportunity to look at those governance models and what are the results of each governance model. Is there something in there? Because right now I don't know how I'm performing versus Jody or Melissa. If there's something in a governance model that gets dynamic, more results that improve students' outcomes, then we should view that. But right now, I don't know that. And we should know that. We're going to make these important decisions. I think it's important with whatever governance model we have that aligns best with what's happening in the rest of the system. I will say, having been from part of the Springfield School District, I arrived in Springfield, to moving to a technical center school district in 2007. when you own your role in the system, the chances are you're going to be more engaged with your kids. You're going to be more engaged in the outcomes. You're going to feel more urgency about it. And I think it's important that we don't forget that having a clear defined role and is very important. And I think if we get pushed together in some sort of, I'm not going to say comprehensive high school is bad. I'm going to say we should have a role that the voters have showed that they support, and the kids through our CLNA have overwhelmed me say, I love my tech center program. And if the results are behind any kind of the three governance model, that should be part of our conversation.
So Senator Williams had a question.
So you guys are unique. You're small. I mean, you talk among, you're already organized.
Mhm.
And you work together. You pretty much you could pick your own governors model. I mean,
We have our own governance
Right,
model.
right.
We serve 350 kids in a year. We're not that small.
so if it's working.
Right.
I'm not in favor of changing it, but we need to sit down and get it, make sure that we get it all included into our plan.
I in talking about this for a dozen years, I think the directors are at a point where if governance models could take what we do further, serve more kids, serve our state, then I think we'd be up for it. I know that there's a few that are not in line with that, but any big change is going to do that. I just sat with the superintendents all morning long, and there's big changes, and the same thing has happened there. Some people don't like the change, some are all for talking. It's just what happens as a natural course of human beings in big change. I think the data piece would help convince some of the people that are wondering if it's the best model. I was talking with Jody. What does the data show that if your governance model is you own the school district, is it better, significantly better? Then that may convince some of the people that aren't convinced that that's one district, 3 districts, 5 districts, 20 districts, districts around the transportation agency. If I have a range of 1 to 20, data should inform all these decisions, particularly when we're talking, we want better outcomes, but what are we getting out of the outcomes that we have, the models that we have? Maintain identity. Yeah.
So
Thank you, Scott. How many schools do your CTE service?
So I have 3 Vermont schools, 1 New Hampshire school. We can't forget about that. And then we serve some smaller independent schools, like Black River and the Compass School. Like Melissa said, an ever-growing population that's homeschoolers. I think homeschoolers have heard that it's a pretty good environment for kids to be in. That's maybe why they chose to go away from the rest of the system. So although the tech center, that's okay. But yeah.
And New Hampshire, they just pay the tuition cost?
New Hampshire's cost pays a tuition that is kind of described in the state rules. Now, Fall Mountain Regional School District, is the largest high school that I could possibly serve. But there are only 4 programs that I can serve them with because they all go to Keene, even though it's 40 minutes a day of less instruction in Keene and 20 minutes more of a day on the bus. But when you do the math of how much I charge them, we look like a lot more. But when you break it down to the minute, we're about the same. And some of it is everybody's under stress for tuition dollars, and they want to keep the New Hampshire tuition dollars in New Hampshire. Part of the restrictions that I've heard from the Ruth Durkee of New Hampshire is, well, you don't send any kids to New Hampshire. Fall Mountain has, they have an ag program that is more aligned with animals, whereas ours is more of a forestry horticulture program. They have a ROTC program, which some people choose that career path. It would be great that if the kids from my high schools could attend that. But right now, the rules in state board education don't allow me to send kids to New Hampshire, which makes it hard for me to bargain with them about going beyond 4, even though it's further for the kids to go to get the same thing in Keene. We used to have 100% access from kids from Keene, from Fall Mountain, but that changed, and there's a lot of politics behind that. But essentially it is New Hampshire dollars should stay in New Hampshire.
Your governance procedures, are they in writing?
Yeah,
They would.
yeah, 60%.
The way they operate, the governance model.
Yeah,
What was the last one?
Is it in writing?
Oh, writing.
Yeah,
yeah. We have to have 60% of our representation from the schools that we serve. 40% are at-large members, all from industry. My board chair is the local economic development person, Noel Jepson of Springfield. We look to get industry from each of our different towns and different industries so that not everybody's coming from Springfield, that we get one from industry from Ludlow, so on and so forth. We meet monthly. We have a school board meeting. We have program advisories. Just last Friday, I had a meeting. We had 60 to 80 people from industry, and then we broke out into that advises each program. That's a requirement of career and technical education. The other data piece that I want to touch on it, and it came up in one of the last tech directors meeting, is the perception is that a small school district is more expensive. And if you look at the data, my tuition per FTE is right in the middle of the pack with the rest of career and technical education. Jody's is right in the middle. So some of the narrative that I've heard from the agency over the years is small districts or small independent tech center districts are more expensive, but I think it depends on the district. I think it also comes from 60% of my people on the board are school board members, and if we increase, they increase. So there's a lot of urgency to make sure that we have a budget that's palatable to them, and we can still operate our center and serve students.
You know, one of the things I think I'm hearing here between all of you, we're not done yet, but is that you're all different. But you have different advisory boards, you have different access to different industries. And so you kind of partially tailor what you do to opportunities and also the kids needs you've identified for your specific communities. And that sounds to me like a strength.
That's why
That sounds to me like a strength that you're all that you're different in some ways. I mean, not that I think you're all in favor of having outcomes and requirements of people are outcome based. I've got the terminology, but proficiencies. But you all do it, at least in part, get there differently, and that's because you understand your communities.
there are elements that we all have to have in place, and we may approach to get to the end differently. But we do have to get to an end. We have to have dual enrollment credits. We have to have industry recognized credentials to certain levels. But the franchise is the franchise to a certain extent, and we have to be very closely tied with industry, and it's just part of what we have to do. So I wouldn't do it any other way either, though, because
So it's about the standard. Who evaluates you? AOE?
evaluates. Yeah. So
To make sure the quality standards are the same and that. You can do things differently, but as long as they meet the same standard, there's gonna be exceptions to every rule. And
So there are standards that we have to meet for every program, multiple different areas that come out annually. And if we're not where we need to be, then the agency of education says, what are you going to do to fix it?
Sure.
And that's part of our comprehensive local needs assessment. And we all have that. And we have to put a plan together. You're not meeting it, not enough kids are getting dual enrollment in your X program. Okay, what is your plan? And that's fine. We're meeting all our goals, so I feel good about that. But people do expect quality for what you're doing and the amount of resources that go into the schools that we run. We should have outcomes that matter.
So is any of that, requirement based on how you're funded? I mean, you said you write the grants for you.
Mhm.
So if it's federal money, every time you have a different source, you have a different set of regulations you have to comply with.
Yeah, the parameters on Perkins are pretty consistent, but there are some specialty grants that we have. As far as Perkins, if we're not meeting a goal after a certain amount of time, then maybe we're required to spend, I think the number is 30% on addressing that particular deficit area over time. We get some time to fix it, but if you don't fix it over time, then they're going to take the money that you get choice about what you want to do, and you have to put it over here. They have even threatened that if a program over time isn't meeting goals, then they may not be eligible for the ed funding that we get as the biggest stick of all. We haven't had to worry about that. Melissa did talk about industry competitive wage. We have a great amount of pride in how we compensate our teachers. That as a tech center school district and having industry people on our board, have been very intentional that we are allowed to recognize industry trainings, industry hours, industry time towards movement through the salary schedule. So you may not have a master's degree, but you're a master in your field, then you should be compensated at that level. And that helps us be a little bit more competitive with industry, but it doesn't get us there all the way. And I still have to, you get summers off every once in a while.
One more question.
Yeah.
7 weeks, question. I mean, I have to move on.
Yeah, this will also be a common question later on for us as well. But to paraphrase, are you in favor of the common school schedule, common bell schedule, and common graduation statewide?
I am in favor and pushed very, very hard to try to coordinate the calendar as much as possible from grassroots, and we might be close to that. I don't know if it's turned out that way about the bigger chunks of time. We should have a coordinated calendar statewide. We should coordinate our schedules in our regions the best we can to serve our students. I know that in some tech centers, there are kids coming and going throughout the class periods all day long, which must be pretty hard. Our kids come in for 2 hours and they leave, and another set comes for 2 hours, which is awesome. But as far as the calendar, we coordinated about as well as you can, but now we're getting into these half days and all of that, which I'm a little old school, and kids, and I may not be popular with the rest of the superintendents for saying this, but how are we going to have kids have great employability skills if they get a half day every other week,
Right.
or the half days that they have happen to coincide with long vacations? Work ethic is putting a solid in for 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, and our employers on our advisories tell us that that's what they value the most up front, and then we'll get to the rest of it. If we structure a system where all kinds of part weeks, part days, and all of that, we're not really contributing to developing great employability skills. So as much as we can coordinate a system where families don't have a hardship for a half a day every week or every other week, we should do that. I know that's not popular, and it's weird to be the old school guy.
And then,
How'd that happen?
I don't know, I'm over decades, I think.
and then for you, for your school, your CTE and your academics are two different facilities, right? Because you have a sending school, they do the academics. You do the
Exactly.
Okay.
Half day model.
And then the last question, very brief. You said you have a regional advisory board. What type of industries? are
So-
participating?
So we have a school board. So 60% of our school board is school board members. 40% of our school board are our local economic development guy. We have a IT person. We have a person that works for the Vestas company on our school board.
What's Vestas? What industry?
It's the Vestas place and that mining place in Ludlow. It's changed names 3 times. Maybe you know it. They're on our school board. Then we have program advisory, which is about 70 to 80 different people from different industries that we meet twice a year to talk about our programs and what we should be doing and where can we place kids on co-ops and all of that. So there's 2 different interactions that are happening with the public.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go, Melissa, go.
Melissa already went.
Now go, Jody.
And she said it all, so thank you, Melissa.
She usually does.
Yeah.
For the record,
Hello, I'm Jody Emerson, Central Vermont Career Center Superintendent Director and President of VACTED this year, just a little bit longer before I hand it off to Eric Rivers. I'm looking forward to that.
You then I'm looking forward to it.
I do, yeah. I thought about your question a little, like I sent a short list of basically our big list. I don't know if I sent it last night or this morning. And then as I thought about it sitting here and having been at the superintendent's piece, I think one of the things that's missing from the agency's presentation and ideas, and maybe all of them, is what is our goal? And if they say equity, what does that mean? Because when I hear that word, sometimes I think it means that we all have to have full day or we all have to have a half day. We all have to be the same. And I don't know if that's what they mean, because that has been unclear. But it would be nice to know what the goal is that we're working towards, to be able to say what's the best way to get there and to use the data that we have across a system of very different CTEs across our state to figure out what is working best. I think that we have success in CTE overall from our accountability data that we get every year. You can see that we're doing well with credentials, with credits, with different groups of kids, that our graduation rates for students who attend CTE are much higher than students who do not in our state. If you look at our comprehensive local needs assessment surveys that we do every other year, or Melissa does every year, and I started doing that this year as well. Yeah, a few of us started just doing those surveys every year. We have in the 90% of people who feel like they belong, but this is the best opportunity. Sometimes it's because they got out of a system that wasn't working for them, or they got to like reinvent themselves. Kind of like when you go into a job or college or somewhere else after high school, you can be whoever you feel like you are. So if the CTE Center is sometimes that just enough distance to give students the ability to reinvent themselves. But it also is a place where they can understand, all of our students know how what they're learning is going to impact their future. I think any of you who've had students before, who your own kids that went through high school, said why, or maybe you remember when you said this, like, well, when am I going to use this ever in my life, or why do I need to know this? Everything we do in our centers, it has a clear connection to why you need to know this. So when we're looking at math or science in our programs, it's very clear how that impact, why angles matter, why measurement matters, for example. And so I think it's really important to think about transformation in general. If you're just talking governance and money, you're not transforming education. But if you're focusing on ways for all students to have meaningful, project-based, problem-based education, then you're transforming the whole of education, right? You're giving more students access to CTE-like training, even if it's not in a CTE center. So I just wanted to set that kind of tone. I've been thinking a lot about it. I too have a struggle of lots of students applying and not enough spaces. And I've talked about this over the years here. We had now I can't even remember, 335, I think, applicants in our first round for 240 seats. We do have a couple of programs that aren't full yet. We had another 80 students that applied in second round. We do have long wait lists for several of our programs. I've worked with Randolph Technical Center. They're going to send us a bus next year. And so they have been accepting some of our overflow. They had low enrollment this current year, and they've already, I heard from their superintendent this morning, thank you for sending more kids to us because we are now up over 100 in our applications. And so I know that we've been able to say, okay, you couldn't get in here, you're on a wait list, or you got denied. Here's another option. And I've also sent several students up to Green Mountain in the same way, but not every student has access to get to another center or the transportation available. And so trying to find ways to build more space and capacity for CTE centers is really important. And that's going to cost money. It's not going to save money, at least initially. So we've talked over the last 3 years about non-competitive funding, but then I also heard you say that it's sometimes having that little bit of competition helps your board to set reasonable budgets for the future. So thinking about where does that balance come from as we continue forward. I'm going to echo statewide graduation requirements would be super helpful in making sure that CTE is represented in that in some way. There are plenty of standards that could apply to traditional high school classes and or CTE, and students can meet them either way. The statewide calendar that we've already been discussing, very important, especially for our teachers to be able to have professional development with their colleagues across the state. That doesn't require us to get subs and for students to lose that time with their instructor. If you didn't see the AOE's presentation in the Department of Labor yesterday to House Commerce, Ruth did a really great job of walking through the comprehensive local needs assessment and talking about the Perkins requirements. So I think that's a really good place to just kind of take a look at that, listen to what she says, because that makes it like lays out the entire format. But it's federal funds for Perkins. It's handled by the AOE. So she does determine if we get them or not. And a lot of times we have to get it back. We apply for it. We get it back. We have to make some changes. If we're not meeting goals, then we do have to spend a portion of that money towards that. And if we continue to not meet goals, we could lose that funding. You also, Scott, mentioned that they could close down a program if we're continuing not to meet the goals. So I had a program in Barrie that I opened, Design and Fabrication, was meant to be a partnership with Norwich University with a new program they were starting. They didn't get started as fast as we did, which sort of held things up a little bit. But it ended up that the students who had indicated an interest really were not as interested. And so every year we had low enrollment. We had 2 students the first year. We had 5 students the next year. We paused it last year because we didn't have enough to run it. We were trying to gather the students for it this year. We had 4 that we had accepted in the first round. And then the board needed to make that decision. And Ruth was very clear with me, if you have less than 7 students, you cannot count them in your FTEs later. And that if you're looking at a 6-semester average, you need to count all your students. My center has had 16% growth over the last 3 years. And we can't count all the students that we have. We have 217 students in our building now. We can only count 186, I think it is. Next year, we can count 194, even though we'll be well over 200 because of that 6-semester average. So losing a program of students, even if it's 7, it has a negative impact on us as we continue to try to grow. So finding ways to help support us in growth is really important.
Is that because of the Perkins funding?
It's part of yes, because there's program quality measures. And so you have to have at least 7 students in a program. Yep. I have a little bit of a bias towards a full day. I envy what Melissa has. I think you have half day, but with academics or full day with academics.
For a full day with academics.
Lovely. I envy that. I think that would be best for my students. They currently come to my center. They start their program day at 8:30. The program ends at 12:30. They go to lunch and then they go back to their sending school. And so for the majority of them, they're getting on a bus going 20 to 40 minutes back to a school to take a class that they're not going to be as engaged in as they have been in their programming all day. So I would rather have the capacity to have them on site and to continue programming and classes that are more related to their technical study. I think everything else that I was going to say has been covered by everyone ahead of me. So, benefits of going last.
Do any of your instructors come from the trades?
Yes.
So do they get a break if they, let's say, I mean, are they currently working? Like, do they get any incentive from their employer if they come in and teach to grow?
Oh, no. So they all come from industry and they switch over to become educators. I have one exception story, but for the most part, they leave their career to come to us. And then because at the same time they're teaching, they also have to take courses to become a teacher. The one exception that I had over a 2-year period was that I couldn't find a plumbing teacher. And so I got an emergency license for one of my lab assistants, and he got credentials so that he could do the NCCER, which is the core construction curriculum, and the plumbing. So he could deliver that online, not necessarily know a lot about it, but could deliver it. And then I worked with VHB, and they sent in one of their master plumbers, and he came 3 days a week, and we just contracted with them and paid for his service. And he actually retired and is now my teacher.
Okay.
So we benefited from that. And VHB would say they did too, because they're getting students from our program as a result of that. Like they've built that connection because of it.
So you don't have a shortage of instructors. I mean, you did have.
I did.
So what type of financial benefits would help you get more? I mean, if they had because I mean, they're making $40 an hour as a plumber. And
I think because I'm an independent district and we're new, we were able to negotiate our first agreement a couple of years ago, and it was much better for industry folks to come to us. So now the pay is much better. It's not as big a pay cut. That helped. It's also just trying to convince someone to not only come in and work with teenagers for 4 hours a day, but also to take college classes. That's part of the barrier, I think. I have an ad out right now for a second electrical teacher to try it because we have a full program with a very long wait list. I could fill another program. I probably could have filled 2 other programs. And I'm not getting applicants for that are actually electricians. So I'm just
thinking ahead, maybe give them some kind of incentive, financial.
Incentives wouldn't hurt. And I think I saw that in the APA report that they released at the end of February, that there was an incentive component to that potentially.
Okay.
And Joni made me think of something back to the ad. We just left the superintendent's meeting across the street, and they were going over a bill, and I don't know if it's the House side, I think it is, that has to do with class size policy. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, if we could take the funding away, that would be one thing. But then if the class size policy, could that serve as a barrier that you're a small school and you want to get to your class size numbers? Would that be it seems like it might be a disincentive to send the kids to the tech center, because then if you send 4 kids to the tech center, then maybe that impacts your local class size. Is there an unintended consequence on the other side of that? It's you do something over here, what happens over here? Just makes me wonder.
If I could add about the financial incentive, I think one thing that's not consistently done center to center is how our teachers' courses that they're required to take as part of teacher licensure are paid for. Some centers pay the entire amount. Some will pay for one course and then they, go through a reimbursement model through their union, their bargaining agreement. And some centers don't pay for any of those. I think if there was, whether each tech center received a grant to pay for that. When I first started, we were able to put those courses into our Perkins grant, but with the transition to Perkins 5, we're not allowed to put in things that benefit an individual. It has to be a whole faculty or nothing. So I think having some sort of way to take that financial burden off of teachers who have potentially left industry and are already taking a pay cut, and then have to take courses on top of that, that would be helpful.
Yes, so
So I do not have a question for Jody, but I do have a question potentially relating to St. Johnsbury Academy. And I was wondering if Ms. Pelosi can see if she can field the question. So the question is, so we're trying to find some common, if folks are commonly support the common school schedule, bell schedule, and potentially graduation requirements in relation to the CTE environment.
So Laura Pelosi, for the record, I represent the St. Johnsbury Academy, and Pat did submit some written comments that get to this with respect to the calendar. Slightly challenging for them in the sense that, you know, they accommodate the schedule of 175 roughly boarding students, 167 actually, boarding students. So for their vacation schedules and things, they build in a lot of travel time. They have coordinated with their regional superintendents to the greatest extent possible. The big difference for them is that most of their CTE students are on campus full day at St. Johnsbury Academy. This year, they only have a couple of students from Danville. Next year, they're going to have only 22 students out of the 400 kids that are taking CTE courses. So for them, it's they've done everything they can to organize with those superintendents to make sure they don't, you know, they can address kind of that off day here and there when they may be in full day school, but maybe Danville or might have an in-service day. And so the kids aren't in school. So they figure out how to work around those few days out of the year where there might be a slight difference. So I think it would be challenging in that way, but they don't, you know, have a lot of kids coming from a lot of other schools, if that makes sense. With respect to graduation requirements, they certainly think that the home schools should recognize the CTE courses for purposes of graduation requirements at their home school.
that's been a common theme.
Yeah.
So I thought about you all sort of talking about that. You used the term graduation requirements. So I sort of think about it slightly differently. Is it really graduation requirements, or is it integration of credits between your school sending to you and yourself? It's sort of, maybe it's one and the same thing, but it seems like, you know, I've heard a few times, you know, some schools will accept what we do as a credit toward this and some won't. Is that really the issue? Is integration of how credits work for the courses provided at the CTEs?
I think that's true for some of my colleagues. For my 6 sending schools, we have agreements of what's integrated and the students get that.
So you've done it that way.
So I don't
Okay.
have that problem.
Yeah.
What I have is a problem of a variety of amount of proficiencies at different schools that have to be met. And students who are with us for half the year and then end up having to leave and go back to their sending school and not complete because they're missing a PE or a health or something that's not integrated into our program.
So that.
And so that would be a barrier. So having like statewide, no matter where you go to high school, the same set of graduation expectations would certainly simplify our opportunity to say, here's the ones we meet. You know, so if it's proficiencies, here are the proficiencies that are met by this automotive program here and across the state. Our automotive programs meet these ones. Here are the ones met by our plumbing programs, for example. And so that way we have that. I think a lot of people don't think about the literacy level required for CTE, but most of what students are using to get their industry certified stuff, their credentials, is college level material. And kids that may not be accessing that at their sending school can access in our centers because they're motivated and engaged in the learning, and it matters. And so we can help build those skills up. And so to say that they're not meeting literacy skills in our center because maybe they're not writing the same essays is not necessarily accurate, right? Like, sure, they're not writing the same essay, but they're reading and comprehending it at the same level. And we can have them write essays or portfolio reflections that show that they have met those proficiencies.
I think some of it is the stigma that may still hang around about the rigor of our program versus what is happening at the Sunday school, although that has changed quite a bit. But it would be easier to get credit for what we do if it wasn't a different target with every school. You know, I think it's a little bit of both sides of your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll say from my perspective, we have several high schools that have a very specific sequencing of courses that they have as part of their graduation requirements. So it could be that you have to take integrated math 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order to meet their graduation requirements. And so if they choose to come to the tech center, it's then them saying, but they're not doing our integrated 3 curriculum. They're not doing our integrated 4, so they're not meeting. So we're going to give them math elective credits that don't count towards graduation. That's where we kind of have a rub.
Okay. Okay, understand the problem, now understand the issue.
Even though they're getting a lot of great math in their engineering program, that doesn't,
Right.
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 Questions? Yes.
Something that I've just been wondering about, if you have like a closed loop with students, the ones who are with you most of the time, or all day. We've been hearing a lot about mental health and, you know, like holistic wellness. Are you all finding yourselves and your instructors that's kind of thrust on you and you don't have any underlying infrastructure to support those students? Do you tell them kind of like, we're going to talk to your counselor at school? How do you handle?
We each have a counselor. So
Oh,
it's a
okay.
counseling coordinator who's trained as a school counselor. And so in my case, mine is very adept at working with students. She worked at Stowe High School prior to coming to us. And works with students who have those needs. I think we may see less of it because of the interest and want to be there and the engagement in the programming, that it's an opportunity to kind of step away from some of the pieces that would impact that in a traditional setting, or it's getting away from those behaviors of peers that, because safety is so important.
Yeah.
There are less behaviors that are tolerated in our
Interesting.
programming. Yeah. And so I think that gives a level of support. I would say that of my students, if they feel the most safe in their programs, the programs develop a really strong culture. They're together 4 hours a day, every day. So that's a lot of time. It doesn't take long. Within the first 2 weeks, that program has a culture.
Yeah.
We struggle more with the cross to center wide culture to try to blend programs and not have these cliques of one program versus another sort of piece. But it's different than what you would see in traditional education. And so I think there are lots of benefits to that. The struggles are in the hallways, and particularly in the hallways with students who are in the high school that we're co-located with, because they don't know one another.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about career technical education is the culture and the bonding that happens. It's like a one-room schoolhouse for auto mechanics or,
Yeah.
you know, that you have 16 people, including the instructor, that are passionate about what they're doing and really great environment. And then, like Jody was saying, we have a counselor, but if we need a specialized service like substance abuse or something, we coordinate with the sending school for those services. Same with more in-depth mental health stuff.
So
And I'll just add, we have 2 school counselors here at Stafford, and we have conference rooms set aside that our partner high schools will send mental health counselors here, and we also do telemedicine as needed for our students, and we have spaces for them to do that.
So that was my next question. So how often do you need mental health counselors or interventions? Because what you do is more of a discipline. I mean, the kids that come there, they understand that there's safety issues. They have to listen because somebody get hurt. You don't have the same problem as some public high schools.
Right. I think it's a lot less than we need that. There's a couple of instances I can think of, and both Scott and I lost students this year, and that's when you need to bring in those extra supports from outside. Just, you know, and that would be true no matter what school they're at. But in general, I think we have the supports in place, or we coordinate well with our sending schools to be able to support students and getting those outside needs met.
Intrinsic motivation and engagement, makes a lot of great things happen.
And I think, trauma is trauma, and we have a lot of students who are coming from home lives that we can't even begin to imagine.
Right.
And I think like any school, we see an uptick in need the week before vacation. Because they're used to coming to school, getting breakfast, lunch, snacks throughout the day. They have a support system. And about a week before vacations, I've seen this in 30 years, and I don't think it's any different at a tech center. They're starting to get nervous about where that next meal's coming from, what their home life is like. So that's when we see an uptick.
Yeah.
But that the community in their program is so supportive that their peers will sometimes step in, and the teachers are able to kind of wrap around, and then we bring in our additional supports as well.
I think a lot of times because the kids are doing what they want to do too.
Yeah.
I mean, that really, and I can relate to that because I wanted to go to Stafford in high school, and then my guidance counselor wouldn't let me. So I fixed him. I flunked out of school. And I think a lot of that has to do with why we lose kids that don't graduate. It's because they decide that at some point in their life they want to change the way they're doing things, and somebody won't let them do it.
So I was very fortunate. I have a repair center, and I got a student that actually came, and the teacher asked him to come and apply for the job like he normally should.
Yeah.
And he did come. He sat down. He said, "I'd like to apply for an auto opening if you have it." And he goes, "If you do hire me, it helps toward my credits to school to get through." So one, I hired him just because no young person does that. I said, "You just coming and asking for a job is huge." So then when he, there's certain, his credits were, he had to watch his attendance for being there and sign a basically an affidavit, if you will, that he put in the time in that. And you could see that he was definitely in his career, what he wanted to do for a career, and having older mechanics and one younger mechanic that he really bonded with, getting into what he wanted to do for his career. And that showed, as that's what I did too. I went through forestry class because I was more hands-on than academic. And it's great to have CTEs that our children can go and learn about what they may want to do in their career. And it does get them ready. And like you said, there's a lot of times we do stuff in school. It's no different going to college. Like, why am I taking this course to pass school? But the CTE at least gives that child more room for success because they put them in the environment they want. And if they don't like it, they can obviously opt out of it at a younger age. But mine was just to tell what a success story to have that student come in. Then I hired him after he graduated, and he stayed with us, and then he got an offer for better pay and more benefits, which I couldn't offer. So I'm like, I never mind losing anybody that's stepping up, and to this day, he's still a very good mechanic. So that just CTE is great.
Yeah, so it's heartbreaking when we have to turn kids away or send them on a wait list and they don't get in, and they want to, and it probably isn't the right fit. So that's the problem we really have to solve, is how to make sure there's more access.
Today, even though I think we had the same 4 of you in, but I have to say, maybe it was just me, but I got like twice as much today. Not to do anything wrong the first time, maybe it's just that it's sunk in this time.
We got more.
And it really, I'm just realizing, I have to say, on a whole other level, impact these centers make on kids. And in some ways, saving kids would otherwise not be in the right environment for success, and providing the environment that allows them to be successful and truly successful and learning everything to be literally just doing it differently. And those opportunities are critical to kids, and actually it's great for everybody. But anyway, I I guess I'm coming away today thinking that I had my arms around it, and now, having a deeper appreciation of the really deep value of what you're doing. So, I just want to say thank you. And I think this was helpful. I hope it was helpful for everyone in the committee to understand, to get down to this level and to really think about the ingredients. They came through today, I think, the ingredients that make you all successful. So